This week, Mary Beth Borgwing from Mach37 joins us for our feature interview. Bruce Sussman, the cybersecurity journalist for Secure World Boston, is our second interview. Then we're going to talk about the news, quickjacking, slicing attack tool, how to fight mobile number poured out scams, Russians apparently hacked the Olympics, top 5 ways security vulnerabilities hide in your environment, and a whole lot more, including Larry and I perhaps drinking wine on for the first time ever on the show. I don't think we've ever had wine on the show.
I don't think so.
So we're going to see how that goes. Stay tuned for this episode of Paul Security Weekly. This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul Security Weekly. I'm, of course, your host, Paul Asadorian. Excited to be here, as always, on Paul Security Weekly.
Hi, and welcome to the show. I totally introduced our host right now, but I've got a totally awkward boner.
What? Where? Oh, hey! I'm in the studio with you guys. That's kind of cool.
Sounds like a plan.
And we'll at least have one person listening.
That's right. Just
yeah, I know, and I appreciate it, and I'm glad you enjoyed your spooning with Jeff. But you know,
hey, that's
actually built a new office.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, third baby on the way, so I needed a new office.
Nice.
I lost my old office. That's now the baby room.
Brought to you by
Signal Sciences is the industry's first web protection platform that works in any cloud, any container, any platform as a service, and any modern application architecture. The Signal Sciences web protection platform can be deployed in next-generation WAF, RASP, or reverse proxy modes, giving customers ultimate flexibility and coverage. Protect your web applications with Signal Sciences web protection platform. Signal Sciences, protecting applications, connecting teams. For more information, check them out at signalsciences.com/PSW. The average time between being hacked and realizing you've been hacked is 1 year. Can you afford to let an intruder roam your network for that long? Can your company weather the fallout when this comes to light? Black Hills Information Security can find the bad guys in your network and train you to do it yourself. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a hunt teaming engagement can help you find a persistent threat in your network.
And welcome to the show. For the first time, classy AF, drinking red wine. But first, let me introduce you to a man who often needs TP for his bunghole, Paul Asadorian.
Welcome, everyone, to this. Okay, and apparently I have some now. Thank you very much for that, Larry. Welcome, everyone, to Paul Security Weekly. I'm, of course, your host, Paul Asadorian. This is episode. I'm all discombobulated because we're just pouring wine and stuff. And I can't believe we're actually drinking wine on the show for the first time ever. So welcome, everyone. Episode 549, broadcasting live here from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island. To my left in studio is, of course, none other than Mr. Larry Pesce from In Guardians. What's your title?
I am the Director of Research and Senior Managing Consultant.
Fantastic, dude.
Fantastic.
It's a really fancy title.
It is.
I'm impressed.
So what it really means is I do stuff.
You do stuff.
I do stuff.
Joff is on the lines via Skype. Joff Thayer, of course, from Black Hills Information Security. And Joff, what is your title there?
My title is That IT Guy. No. I would say it's a
Hey, you in the bushes
analyst, or That IT Guy, or Senior Security Researcher and Pen Tester, or I don't know. I don't have a title.
That would explain
but often we refer to you as, hey, you in the bushes.
Yeah, yeah, that guy. Look, I just have to say I'm very, very impressed with your level of sophistication drinking wine. I hope it's good quality wine, because I have a saying that life is too short to drink cheap wine.
I say that about cigars as well.
Yeah. But why didn't you start 2 weeks ago when I was up there in studio?
I know.
Because now I'm disappointed.
Well, this was a gift from our fine friends at Kryptonite NXT, where some of my former coworkers from Tenable work. So Rick Olesek was actually, and Rich Walchuk, both work there, and sent us this wonderful gift as a thank you for having having them on one of our other shows. So it is a red. I don't think I've ever had that, to my knowledge, a red blend. It's like a blend of a bunch of different red wines together. And apparently the bottom has like this place in it where you can put your thumb to turn. Apparently that's to turn the bottles, to rotate them for the sediment and stuff.
You don't
I don't
drink
know.
wine very often, do you?
Nope. Our resident wine expert is actually one of our new salespeople and co-host for the Stogie Geek Cigar Show.
Nice.
So we'll have to bring him on maybe one of these shows, talk more about wine. So in any case, do we want to do, I'm going to skip conference announcements until next segment. I'm going to talk about itpro.tv/security weekly. Make sure you go there, Sec Weekly 30. It's a great way to keep up with all things technology and security related. So make sure you visit them. There's a webcast on our on-demand program, which I'll tell you about later, that will feature IT Pro TV as well. So with that, I would like to introduce Mary Beth, who is an executive entrepreneur and an advisor to Mach37, and she'll be here talking about her background, among other things. Mary Beth, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for having me. You guys sound like you're having a lot of fun over there.
We do. We try and make it fun.
Every Thursday.
Yeah.
Every Thursday.
Got out my champagne. So.
Yes, absolutely. You should. Feel free. So, Mary Beth, how did you get your start in information security?
Well, I don't know if you have enough wine for that, so it would take me a while to give you my story, but a lot of my career was spent in Boston, and in Boston you couldn't not get into technology, and then technology led to security. So I was CFO and a board advisor to many startups and emerging companies in Boston. One that some of you might remember if you follow healthcare IT before the HITECH Act was a company called Centillion that spun out of HP.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the CFO and board member for that, and we raised $51 million right before 9/11. And we were sold to Microsoft and became their healthcare platform. And that was really the first single sign-on in healthcare. And I worked with a great team out of HP, and we really rode it up high. And before it was acquired, and obviously 9/11 kind of changed the tune up in Boston a little bit in the technology world. But I decided that I would take a pause from I was at that time probably had been at about 10 startups in technology and a couple in security. And I went to work for Marsh McLellan, and I helped a group over there really get cyber security insurance off the ground when nobody was even understanding what that was. So that's kind of how I got my start. I kind of came into it with a toolkit from other industries, but quickly learned that there was a big need for people that understood operational risk, enterprise risk. I also helped a company called Vigilant that is now called Vigilant by Deloitte. It was sold to Deloitte. I was their board advisor and CFO, and we really helped people like RSA and Archer build really good SIM platforms. And then I really went deep into really helping people understand their cyber risk enterprise, what they need to do at the enterprise level to build a cyber risk culture. And I worked with Zurich and a company called Advisen, which is a big data analytics company in the insurance sector. And I joined my company with Advisen, and we really went big into the data analytics world, and companies like Security Scorecard and BitSight and Prevalent and Risk Lens and people like that came to us for consultation on our data, and so I helped them with their first data sets. And then here in DC, so I've made it up and down the coast. So I've gone from Boston to New York, and now I'm in DC. And in DC, I helped a company called Lemonfish, was a big data analytics company that could monitor data on the open, deep, and dark web and find critical assets with data partners that had APIs of data feeds. And we would help companies in the Fortune 50, Fortune 1000 really find their critical data, whether they were having a ransomware case, or maybe they were just having, an insider threat issue and they didn't understand who was the external side of the insider threat or what the insider was doing. And that company was acquired last year. And since last year, I've been helping Mach37 and helping people that are founders and that have the dream of building a security company in this crazy, like mixed up world of where do I fit in solving the problems in cyber. So I really help them understand product market fit, and I have a lot of great relationships with the investors. And, you know, I really get them ready to go to investors with Mach37.
And so how did you come to hold that position at Mach37?
Well, I picked my head up from Lemonfish, and I realized that, you know, down here, I was kind of used to New York and Boston being having a big ecosystem of, you know, technology and cyber companies, you know, being able to go over to MIT, to Cambridge, you know, just go to one of the enterprise forums, or go to New York and go to some of the meetups that Microsoft held. And I realized that there wasn't an epicenter here, and that Mach37 was trying really hard to, you know, build the cohort classes and get companies out there and be the only accelerator really that's focused totally on cybersecurity. And when, you know, I realized that there was a confused messaging ecosystem down here. New York said that, you know, well, we're the biggest global cyber center, and Boston will say, well, of course, we're the biggest healthcare cyber ecosystem, and then nobody can replace Silicon Valley. And so when we all got together down here, we realized we don't want to replace Silicon Valley. We want to make cyber even have more to offer with all the talent we have here in Washington, D.C. So I said to the guys at CIT, which is the Center for Innovative Technology that owns Mach37, I said, let's build an ecosystem. And so that's what, you know, we really started to focus on, and getting companies that, if you look at a cyber ecosystem with rings like satellites, or rings like, you know, water that you know, when you drop a stone in, that stone that Mach37 drops in is an MVP and beyond, sometimes a repeat founder, but they need to be able to quickly find out who their partners should be and who the clients should be, and then also, you know, where they fit amongst those companies, and how are they going to grow their sales. So we needed to grow an ecosystem to do that. So we reached out to a lot of the community here with a great response, and we said, you know, we're looking to include you. What do you need? And so a lot of them said we need to understand innovation better. A lot of them, the investors said, we need a lot more investors to know what goes on in DC. So we started to do more of these reach out events, and that's kind of what we're doing this year. Is we're doing a lot of reach out in the ecosystem before we build our next class at Mach37.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, Mary Beth. You seem to have built a culture in DC first to then attract those companies to. Am I wrong in calling it an incubator, or is it more? It's more than that?
Yeah, it's an accelerator. So if you think about the difference, and I think that accelerators, you know, are changing, and I think there's more virtualness needing to happen around cyber. You know, we get calls from all over the country about Mach37 and saying, can you bring your accelerator to our state? And I say, well, we can bring that culture of what we're trying to do to help companies to your state and help you understand it. And I think that's the difference, is we're trying to help people understand that cyber can be everywhere, and it can be virtual as long as you get the right people in a room. So it's kind of like we're creating a way for companies to accelerate their sales and understand, you know, where they fit, and if there's a market for their product, and how they're going to have to pivot, because every startup has to pivot. I know most of the startups that have come across, you know, in the last 2 years, and everybody has to pivot. Like, look at what GDPR is doing to everybody. Everybody now has some kind of a GDPR tool. Oh yes, I can play in that arena. And so it moves so fast here. It's the fastest moving train, right? Is to find the product market fit for your product. And so you have to move really quickly. So these companies that are coming out of an accelerator, they need really, really good companies that have problems to solve around them, and that becomes that ecosystem, is how a company can come out and really help solve that problem. And they have to do it in a different way. They have to be faster than the slowest lion, really, to really get ahead and not get caught, and not be that antelope that gets eaten, right? And they will get buried by the IBMs of the world and others that buy technology before they even get their products launched. So they have to really find the right way to fit their product into the market.
If I'm listening to the show today and I'm thinking about creating a startup, or I've already begun that process and I'm assuming you have to apply to be in the Mach37 Accelerator. You probably just don't accept anyone.
Right.
What do I need to know, and what kind of things should I have in place before I do that?
Well, that's a really good question. So the accelerator is really 5 years old, and if I look at the 53 companies that have come through, they all have a kernel of uniqueness, and they have a reason why they were, why somebody wanted to solve a problem or get developed. And so I think one of the things you need to do is to be a realist. And so, you talk about there is an application process, and then there's a committee that sits down, and an investment committee that votes on how they take them in, because there's only so many companies that they can work with at a time. But, just in my own personal consulting practice that I have, basically what I do is sometimes I sit with people and I give them, 3 or 4 hours of my time. And I invite some of my, expert friends to come in and sit with them. And we kind of give them a lot of questions. Sometimes it's a CISO, sometimes it's a marketing person, a sales strategy person, or somebody who does, if and you kind of have to look at a 360-degree view of what you're going to be bringing to the market, right? And so if you can get that kind of advice before you go far down the road to building a product, it's really, really valuable, because I've sent a lot of very mature executives away that have come from big companies that want to solve problems, but they haven't thought through their product enough. So you really have to take it through a process and you need to be able to handle the advice that your baby may be ugly right now, and we can help you make it better, but you've got to maybe pivot, and you've got to maybe take some hard advice. And founders have a really hard time sometimes doing that. But usually when we sit down with somebody who will take that advice, we know that they're ready to take on a CEO role or a CEO founding role until they, obviously get a larger company that they might need to bring a professional CEO into, that they can get it off the ground. It will have liftoff if they can take that advice, because that's some of the hardest things to do. Is it's like painting a painting. You're an artist when you're in cybersecurity, and you're painting a painting, and someone comes along and says, "I don't like that painting," and you're not going to be very happy as an artist. So we have a lot of really great technologists that are like artists in our field, but they maybe need to understand that they need to have somebody buy that art in order to build a company and to get an entity going. It's not just about the artist and the founder. It's about how to make an entity and how an artist would have a following.
I hate to have you pick favorites of those 53 companies, but obviously there being 53 of them, I won't ask it that way. I'll say if you could highlight, a couple of those, for our audience, just to kind of give them some idea of what some of the maybe more innovative things are, or companies that stick out in your mind of those 53.
Sure. Well, it's funny. I think there's a lot of superstars in the group, and there's a lot of creativity. So we just had a class that graduated, and we're getting ready for a fall class again in April. A spring class in April. Our fall class had a cast of characters. We had folks from all over the world come into the accelerator. So we had a group from the Ukraine called Heidi's, and they had good English. And the first thing we made them do is we put them through a Shark Tank. And the first week that they're there, we made them do a video of their pitch, and because they'd given us their pitch at the investment committee, and then we wanted them to tape their pitch, and then we had some sharks in the room, kind of like what I told you about what I do in my consulting practice before people go and go out to get money or go to an accelerator, and we saw that pitch and we saw their slides, and most of us, sharks, were sitting there like, oh boy, right? But the Heidi's guys, they took all of our advice, and they were like showmen. And we decided that they could go on Saturday Night Live if there was a Saturday Night Live for cybersecurity startups, because they were hysterical.
It sounds, Mary Beth, it sounds like a reality TV show. Like someone should produce a reality TV show and follow around these different classes of They do that with MMA and lots of other things. So I would watch. Just
Right. And then we had some repeat founders who, we helped them, and then they would say, "Oh, but I did that before." I'm like, "Yeah, but how big did your company grow before?" And then they say, "Well, yeah, I only got it to like $1 million." I'm like, "Well, do you want to have $1 million company or do you want to have $100 million company?"
Yep.
Yeah,
big difference.
Yep. And then we have guys that get funding at the time they're in the accelerator. So really, what our job is to help them accelerate sales and accelerate their exposure to investors. So we have a company that will be announcing the end of this week. They're getting their seed funding, and they have a critical infrastructure product. And so we have another company in that group that is also getting funding, and they're in the education, cyber education space. So I think out of our class of 6, we have 3 that have really good funding, and another one has won an award. The Heidi's group has won an award, and they have another business that they are funding their business with to grow this business in the United States. So that they're a great story. The Run Safe Security guys are another great story. They really came in with an experienced team and had a couple startups before. But what happened was there's a bonding that goes on with all the startups because of the positioning of being an accelerator and having people have graduated before and they come back and talk to the class. So Virgil Security, I don't know if you know Mike Virgil, he's really good at networking and helping the other startups. And that has been really valuable. And Mike has gotten a significant amount of funding, as has NS8. And then a company called Shavira, which is run by Georgia Weidman. She's the founder of that. She got patents approved this year, and she's had over 30 proof of concepts. And she's not even 25 yet. So she's kind of our young superstar, and she happens to be a woman, and we haven't had that many women founder. We did have another woman founder this year that went through our cohort. So it's really good.
What's been the most successful exit and or like revenue growth of all of the companies that have gone through the Mach37 program?
Yeah, well, so if you put the timeline together, if you say it's a 5-year, they've had 5 years to grow. I don't know every company intimately because I wasn't involved with Mach37 in the early days, but of the 53 companies, a real metric for us, and you have to think about it, a lot of them were really early in the first 2 years of the accelerator. They took on MVPs. If you guys know what MVPs are, they just have an idea. And then as the accelerator got more legs, they got a little bit more choicey about what companies they help, because they learned that those companies that were just at the MVP level maybe needed to be incubated versus accelerated, because you can't accelerate something that's not built. So I'd say that the transformation of that is really important. But I think the guys who have gotten their A round, because if you think about the life of a startup, it takes at least 9 months to get funding of any kind, whether it's seed, no matter how much you're raising, whether you're raising 5 million or 100 million, it takes at least 8 months to close on funding. So if you think about the cycle that we've been in, we've been around for like 5 years. We have at least 30% of our portfolio has gone to an A round, and that's really, really good.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, that's a really good metric. So what are some of the pros and cons to creating your own startup for those listening that may want to do that?
Yeah. Well, I think you have to be a person that doesn't need a lot of sleep. And you have to be able to work as a 24/7 team. If you're at the early stages, you have a little bit more control over that. But once you get clients are king, and cash is king. And you have to be able to really think about deploying your cash. And you have to be able to bring people in and exit them on your team as fast as you bring them in. Because every day you don't do something to pivot your product or move your product forward is a day you've lost to your competition. Because there's always competition. And no matter what anyone tells you, there's always going to be somebody else behind you who's building a product. When I was CEO of Lemonfish, our day started at 5 o'clock. And, we would have maybe 4 to 5 customer meetings in a day. They would run an hour and a half. And then the co-founder and I, Dr. Lance Forbes, we would sit down at 5 o'clock and go, okay, what do we need to do to make sure that we're doing everything these clients need? So your clients become like your neediest children, or they're your best friends, because once you make them happy, there's nothing like a happy client, and you've solved their problem. So you've stopped the intruder, you've found out who the extortionist was, you've helped them to decide how to pay the ransomware and who's the guardian at the gate. How do you be the guardian at the gate for them? So that's a real huge hurdle. You need to be able to raise money, and you need to be fundable, as I say. So I've met a lot of CEOs who have had to tell that they're not fundable, that they maybe should seek alternatives instead of getting venture investment, they should seek alternative investment, because they don't have the right makeup to get money from a venture fund for whatever reason. Maybe they took on too much angel investment. They maybe have 100 of their relatives that invested, $17, and investors don't like to follow that. Or maybe they just don't have the right team. I've had teams that I've consulted with in my past where they were a founding team that was all fighting, but they had the best product, but they couldn't get along as people. So I was their mediator until the company was kind of acquired, because they had the top 75 banks as clients, and yet they couldn't decide how to run the house together, because running a company is like running a house together, or a corporation. You really got to everybody has to know their role and play their role. And when 3 people are founders or 2 people are founders, sometimes they think they play every role. So when you're a founder, you're going to trust other people to play roles. So sometimes those companies are not fundable. And so learning that early on and being able to accept what your role is really, really good. When I worked with Dr. Lance Forbes, he said, listen, you don't know, he's a PhD in artificial intelligence. He says, I know that, and I know all about big data, and you know all about how to run the business. So we became buddies and partners, and we respected each other's roles because we knew each other's strengths and weaknesses. We learned that early on, and that's why we were successful. So that, I think learning that early on is truly the secret sauce to how you're going to have a successful, startup.
Each one of you had a very particular set of skills, as they say.
Absolutely. Yes.
To quote the phrase.
I love the way that you just said that, Mary Beth, because what strikes me is being involved in this industry, but it really applies to any industry. You've got to sit back and listen and understand what people are all about, and understand where people can contribute and where they cannot. And that listening ability and that learning ability is probably most important than anything else.
Absolutely. You really have, and you have to listen to your clients and your team. And my team came out of the IC community when I was at Lemonfish, and they hadn't been at a startup before. So they were the smartest guys in the room. They knew, and I said, we don't have the resources that the IC community does, but we're going to rock everyone's socks with this product. And that's what we did. But we had to teach each other how to communicate between, what they could do with data and what we could do as a startup. So it was really a lot of fun. It's totally a lot of fun.
Mary Beth, if you had to create a startup today in cybersecurity, what types of problems would you be looking at solving?
Well, that's a really good question. I think that cybersecurity is everyone's problem. It's not just the people that can code. And so I think the communication piece is what I think this year has been trying to be by visualization. And I haven't seen it happen yet. I've seen a lot of people, a lot of companies trying to do, platforms and dashboards, but they're not still communicating enough of what the average man, you kind of look at it as in the healthcare world, in the drug world, when somebody is going to join a clinical trial or something, they're supposed to be able to understand everything in that clinical trial legal document at the 7th grade level. And we don't have cyber dumbed down like that. We need to make cyber for every person, and because it's about the people, and the people have to be looking out for the enterprise, and then the enterprise has to have security. And then the security has to be defensible, and it has to be actually preventable. And I think if we build that into all of our systems within the organization, and just as consumers, if we get people to understand more, I think it's about communication, better visualization, and also really looking outside of our walls. Everyone thinks they've built a fortress. But what we learned at Lemonfish, and when I worked with a lot of my partners who collected data, is that everything you know, and you guys probably already know this, I'm telling you what you know, but everything you know about yourself is already out on the open, deep, and dark web. There is no like privacy anymore. And companies have that same problem, and their IP is out there. And so I think if people started looking as fiercely as they do internally, they looked externally, I think that we would have a better, sort of start to understanding privacy and security.
I want to change gears and switch to, you mentioned before that of all the companies that have gone through the accelerator at Mach37, very small percentage are women. Why is it that there is a much smaller percentage of women versus men in our field today?
Well, that's a hard question. I think some of it is, if I listen to some of the big companies, CISOs that are women, that I'm having at we haven't talked about United Women in Cyber yet, but we're doing an event here to build that ecosystem out on March 29th. And we started around Uniting Women in Cyber 2018 is our mission for 2018 for uniting around cyber, but we're actually having a symposium in Tysons Corner, Virginia, McLean, Virginia, at the Gannett building, where we're going to be having a symposium that's going to be talking about leadership, innovation, and inclusion. And so if you think about all of the women industry groups we have around cyber jitsu, women who code, girls who code, all the STEM projects. So why don't more women want to be a founder of a technology company that focuses on security? Do they think they can't do it, or are people inhibiting them to do it? And, I've talked to a lot of this current sitting CISOs about it. One that's going to be at the conference, which is Amy Holland from CSRA. She said, listen, I started my career as an ethical hacker. And she said, I wanted to do good. And I had no limits, no boundaries. And she said, and now, I feel like I'm very comfortable in my role as a CISO. And so she's going to talk about that at the conference. I think women have a different approach to building products and creating solutions. I think women are very team orientated. I think they want to go as a group and build a team, and they quickly learn that everyone on that team has a role. If you look at what the car manufacturers are doing now, that they're asking women who buy all the cars, what they want in the cars, their sales are increasing, and they're getting better response, right? So I think we're not catering to the way women want to learn and be part of the cybersecurity industry and what they can contribute. So one of the other topics we're going to talk about at the conference is emotional intelligence and how the people side of cyber is really, really important. And so I think we need to open the door a little more. We need to make sure that there's more women engineers and more women in leadership. And we're going to talk about getting women on boards, but more importantly, getting women with cybersecurity experience on boards. There are a lot of us. We're just not getting to be founders and taking that risk because we're not sure we're going to get the funding. There was another company here that a woman, she worked at the White House. She also worked to help stand up DHS, and she's just coming out of stealth mode. The name of her company is Trinity Cyber, and she told me that basically she went to New York to get her funding because she couldn't find enough people that would go behind her. Is it because she's a woman, or is it because her idea was novel? I think it might have been a little bit of both. So having raised a lot of money in the cyber markets over my career, I got to know every investor out there. I got the money, but I wasn't the CEO of the money. The early on, when at 9/11, when I raised money for Centillion, I wasn't the CEO then, but I was the one that they trusted to, that would be there to help the company grow. And so I think it takes a lot of trust for people to get behind, someone that doesn't look like that, because there's not a lot of women investors. So We want more women engineers. Since I started raising money for Centillion so long ago, I've noticed that there's a definite increase in women venture companies, probably triple to what I was when I raised money many years ago.
Mary Beth, is part of the problem start in our education system that, in my opinion anyhow, doesn't teach engineering to the level that I would like, especially early on? And what can we do to help that problem?
Yeah, well, I think it's that whole thing about acceptance. So if you think about, you can go all the way back to middle school where, the hormones are raging in all the kids and everybody's like not knowing what they're doing. But, there's a lot of insecurity built up in people if they don't feel accepted. So that's when girls usually leave the classrooms that are more dominated by boys. So that may be honors math, science. But I think that's changing because there's such an awareness now that's been built around it. So I think in generations that are coming up behind us, there's going to be a shift. In the millennials that are today, that have played a lot of sports and then they're big team people, I don't think the girls that today are taking no for an answer, but I think some of the leadership above those millennials still has a bias to hiring, if they have a choice, they might not take the woman because of all the reasons, that are the biases that have built up. But I was just on the phone with a lawyer before our call. She's writing a white paper on the Me Too issue and how it's affecting brands and reputation of companies. So I think that you're going to see a shift, all the marches that have gone on. I mean, people are just, with social media, we can't hide on those things anymore. So I think the money is there for the education for STEM. And I think that there's a lot of the higher ed institutions that are reaching down into the middle school era to make sure that kids stay in these programs, girls, and we get more minorities into cybersecurity as well. I don't know if you know, but there's a group called ICMCP, International Cybersecurity for Minority Cybersecurity Professionals. And they have started an education group for middle school and up. And they have created some SOCs in colleges where they can learn the skills. And so that's really to promote women and minorities. And I think that's, we need more of those.
I might argue that we need more of those even at an earlier age than middle or high school.
I agree with that, Larry.
Potentially even to middle school. Now, being parents of elementary schoolers, that teaching some of that stuff now to both genders and all races would be amazing and huge. But it kind of feels that right now I'm left to do a lot of that at home.
Me too.
Which I'm okay with because I get to play with all the fun toys too. But
but you wish that the teachers in the elementary schools, that there was resources that could teach those skills to elementary school kids.
Right, and arguably we have one of the best STEM schools. Our kids are in one of the best STEM schools in the state.
And you wish they could just go into a room and have like an innovation lab where they could all code together.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of girls coding now, a ton, but and that they should start at an early age, and it's changing all the time. When my middle daughter started coding, I was like surprised, but I'm like, this is awesome, and she loves it. So, but yeah, I mean, I think they should make it as cool as going to ballet or going to gymnastics. They could, because they can show them what they could do online with that. So,
There's been more often than not we get the Corinne, our 10-year-old, come to the table. It's time for dinner. Dad, give me a minute. I'm finishing my Scratch program.
Nice.
Okay. Yeah. Well, get to the table.
It's good, Larry, because I did the same thing. My nearly 19-year-old now is in college, but I got her involved in the Lego robotics movement back in the day, and she loved it. We pushed it. We avoided the biases. If she was interested, we let her go, and it's a valuable lesson. Now, I'm disappointed a little bit that she didn't end up looking at mathematics and computer science. I think she'll come around eventually do that because she can't help it. It's genetics, but yeah. But it's very important. The biases, I think, is a really good point, Mary Beth. And it's inadvertent. Even as a parent, you try not to, but it's hard to resist societal conditioning, and it's going to be a long road.
I think it is, but I think some of these social media things really make it make acceptance happen, because I think girls are dreaming about what they want to see on video games and things. And, like my co-founder, Dr. Lance Forbes, his daughter was creating video games and doing AI. And I mean, she was amazing, right? And, her father supported her all the way, but I mean, and there was a lot of girls in her school doing it. I just think it's just starting to bubble up. I'm seeing a change, but I'm not seeing it in the corporations. And a lot of the big corporations have told me that, they want their intern women engineers to stay, but sometimes they don't get accepted into the group. And, when I was at Centillion many years ago, I only had one woman engineer, and, she just felt like she was being ostracized. So, I had to go and talk to the boys and say, listen, she's one of our best engineers. Smarten up. We don't want to lose her. We can't afford to lose her. We're on countdown to version 4 of our product, And I think sometimes they're just not aware of it. And so I think it's creating that awareness and not being afraid to communicate about it is really important.
Well, I think there's another part of it too, and that is, we're not about ignoring gender difference. In fact, we're about embracing, I think, societally, that women have a lot to add in a difference in thinking. And the difference in thinking, frankly, in this industry, I think, is that women are able to think much more in a parallel processing kind of way. It sounds a little bit corny to say it that way, but men tend to be very sequential, and I think there's a huge gift in the way that women can think around a problem that a lot of men cannot, and we need to embrace it and push it forward.
I agree with you. So I think you're right. I think diverse teams really make much better products and companies. And leadership teams. So.
Absolutely. Well, you would say that, right?
So, Mary Beth, did you want to tell us a little more about your upcoming conference and how people can get involved with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're doing a couple really cool things. We're doing some meetups before the conference. One in Reston's town center, if you guys are familiar with the heart sort of Reston, and at the company called The Goal. And we're going to do it on a current event. We're going to really kick off the conference sort of with a meetup, and we're going to talk about data security and GDPR. We have a panel of experts for that. And then the following week on the 29th, we're going to have the symposium at Ballow Park. We have really made it so that we have vignettes, and we're kind of recognizing everyone's voice at the conference. So we're giving everyone a chance that comes to the conference to go to a station, a meetup, and put their voice into a podcast and into language. We're going to have laptops available for talking about what does leadership mean to you, what does innovation mean to you, and what does inclusion mean. And then we're going to have an innovation alley, where we're going to have a lot of innovative teams. Like MITRE is bringing some consumer IoT products that they want someone to commercialize, and that some women at the City Lab have developed. And we've got startups, lots of startups like Cutting Edge and Trinity Cyber and High Trust, who's a mature company in cybersecurity. And we have some of the industry focused companies like Cyberjitsu, Women Who Code. They're going to have like a table where they can want people to sign up. So this conference is like an umbrella to kind of say that we want everybody to unite. There's something in this ecosystem for everybody. So we've got the Northrop Grumman's, we've got the big technology companies, we've got Leidos, we've got small startups, we've got law firms that are focused on cybersecurity. So we've got a really, really diverse group of speakers and sponsors. And we're going to have about 300 people plus a VIP dinner. We also have best-selling author Code Girls, which if you haven't heard of it, get it for your daughter. It's probably a cool book.
Googling it now.
That she might like to read, because it's about the start of cryptography at the NSA and how during World War II that there were all the women that started NSA. It's written by Liza Mundy, and we're going to have some women that came from the NSA to be there to speak with Liza. So it's going to be really cool.
And where's the website where people can find out more information?
It's www.uniting women in cyber.
Awesome.
I am totally going to buy that book for my daughter.
There you go.
And the website, go to the website because it talks about how these women didn't even know what they were going to be doing because it was secret. They couldn't tell anyone for many years. And now some of them are in their 90s and they're just talking about it. So it's really cool. I'm guessing they're going to make a movie out of it.
Oh, yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah. So.
Well, Mary Beth, thank you very much for appearing on Paul Security Weekly. It was wonderful having you.
Yeah, you're welcome, guys. Enjoy your wine.
We will.
And, thank you for having me.
Thank you. With that, we are going to take a short break, come back with our next interview, so stay tuned.